Now is the chance to use reliable energy to grow your money with the Dominion Energy Reliability Investment. Our new investment product offers competitive returns, no maintenance fees, and flexible online access to your money. Make the reliable investment in reliable energy. The Dominion Energy Reliability Investment. To find out more, go online to reliabilityinvestment.com. That's reliabilityinvestment.com.
Warning. The Outsider's Edge contains strong opinions, unconventional views, and contrarian stances. Listen, if you dare.
Hey, yo!
You hear the sound of those sirens, y'all. That can only mean one thing. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Outsider's Edge, right here on the Chairshot Radio Network, where we invite you to enjoy your day the Chairshot way and always use your head. This is your boy, Mr. Kyle Moores. I am here with my Golden Lovers brethren, Mr. Ray Cash. How you doing, sir?
Look at me showing up every week to work like an adult.
I know, right? And like double meaning because you actually at work.
Literally. And I'm at work, I'm working here, and I'm doing your job because I'm teaching my daughter before school starts.
I know. Look at you just doing all kinds of shit, man.
Hey, man. I wear many hats. I got a big head.
We were going to take this week off because, spoilers, behind the scenes, it's my birthday this week. So we were going to take this week off. But... man, some like really important shit happened over the weekend, and we would have been remiss as a show to not like get on the airwaves and talk a little bit about it. So let's just start with the elephant in the room. 12 superstars from
it was 13. Desmond Troy too. Yeah, Desmond Troy got released too.
13 superstars were released from NXT. The full list. Do you have the list in front of you?
You give me 5 seconds, I can have it because I'm
pulling it up as well. So the list of names includes Bobby Fish.
Yes.
Bronson Reed. Jake Atlas. Ari Sterling. Kona Reeves.
Cocaine Kona Reeves, baby.
Leon Ruff. Stephon Smith, Tyler Rust, Zechariah Smith, Asher Hale, Giant Zangier, Mercedes Martinez. And then who did you say was our 13th?
His real name is Denzel Dejournette, but he recently started going by the name Desmond Troy.
And Desmond Troy. So that's 13 people released, several of whom were not only in active storylines, but like Bronson Reed was North American champion like 2 weeks ago.
Tyler Rust speaking of active storylines, the Diamond Mine is feuding with two people. Well, I'm sorry, one now, because one of the two people they were feuding with just got released. See you, Bobby Fish.
Yeah, so like they just gutted the depth of the NXT roster. Anyone that was not one of their like headlining names, basically, or one of the newer developmental names were released from the NXT roster, which in and of itself is dizzying. It feels like week after week after week after week after week, we're sitting on this show talking about more and more people got, put out of a job in spite of all these record revenues and profits and all this other bullshit. And so over the weekend, more and more news came out kind of surrounding these releases. And why don't you kind of go over that for us?
Well, as we know, NXT holds multiple hats, right? NXT is part developmental system, part third touring brand. It's what, especially in recent years, since they've got a TV deal and they go on the road and whatnot. Well, so the reports are coming out that Vince, Bruce Pritchard, Johnny Ace, and of course Nick Khan, who's the guy behind the money situation, have kind of taken another look, kind of reinvigorated their interest in NXT and its place in the hierarchy of WWE. In fact, there are concerns and questions as to if the NXT is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And so, which its initial job is to create stars for the main roster.
I was going to say, which is a valid question to ask if you really want, but I mean, it's not the correct question. The correct question for me, for the last little while at least, has been, what is NXT supposed to be doing?
Well, that's a very fair question, and I'm sure it's one that Vince asks, because if one thing we know about NXT is that Uncle Paul, aka Triple H, has full autonomy down there.
Yeah, he controls that. That's his baby.
Vince doesn't ask no questions. And in fact, if you don't mind, I want to reference a text message me and you had between each other, because there was a report coming out from a guy on the record, but with anonymity. I think I said the word right.
Anonymity.
You did
close. You did very good.
You look at Dr. S'mores over there. Speaking about how the quote unquote hoarding the WWE did with their roster, and he said that initially they weren't hoarding, they were hiring that many people for the right reasons, quote unquote, because of the global localization of what they were trying to do with the NXT, the Performance Center possibly in India, and the one possibly in Japan or China, and the one possibly in they already got the one in Europe that's I think in London or Blackpool or wherever it is, and the one that's possibly going to be in Brazil or wherever, or Mexico. So it legitimately was a reason to hire so many people, but then as the company became a necessary third brand and got into kind of a ratings war / content war / talent war with AEW, New Kids on the Block, it became a sense of hoarding. And so I saved this because I'm very proud of this thought, but I think it's very good to kind of discuss, if you will. But and I'm going to read it just like I sent it to you. I don't think they were hoarding until AEW, because the guy said hiring all the talent had honest intentions because of the upcoming global performance centers. They were going to make NXT the NWA of the world, and then NXT turned into a third brand overnight because it had direct competition. And I think Vince looked at it like Hunter had to earn his keep. He's built a performance center, had a brand, ran at a financial loss for years, got an approved global plan, and all of this with full autonomy. Now they got a company directly attacking them, so beat them and prove the brand is worthy and viable on its own, and they didn't, and now NXT seems to be getting restructured.
So, I mean, and then that was further validated by the reports. So,
yes.
Do you want to get into those next then?
Yeah, we can get into the reports. Which ones? There's so many.
I mean, just the report that. So allegedly, the official stance is now NXT is going to go back to developmental.
Well, yes, that's legit. It's the one with where Meltzer said he had the correct direct quote, which I don't believe.
Yeah, I don't necessarily believe the direct quote, but like the important details from the quote were the concept that from now on, NXT is going to go back to pure developmental. No more people over 30. No more people who've been on the indies forever. They want young people that can become main characters and stars, and they want big guys. And, you know, the return to the Curtis Axel era of NXT.
So I don't believe all of that. I believe a bunch of that. But if they were returning to the big guys, then they would have saved some of the big guys they released. Bronson Reed is the perfect guy for that company So much so that he was just doing tryout matches not even a month ago. So that's the stuff that makes me question my mind. And on top of that, one of the quotes was "No more midgets." They just offered reportedly $1 million to Adam Cole, who is, quite frankly, quite small. So it makes me wonder, but I do believe that the brand is going back to its intentioned purpose, which is strictly developmental. And I think they're gonna rethink. Triple H messed up when he started hiring people specifically for the purpose of being in NXT. That should have never been the goal. Like Samoa Joe made sense because Samoa Joe was going to be strictly NXT and be a trainer, much like Cassius Ono re-signed to the brand for. Cassius
Bobby
Ono
Fish
re-signed.
made sense for the same reason. Bobby Fish is in his
Bobby
early 40s. Like,
right?
Mercedes Martinez.
Hideki Suzuki, who is Hachi Man with the Diamond Mind. That is, he actively works as a trainer, but he also wrestles. That makes sense. But when you're signing your Garganos and your Ciampas and your Undisputed Eras and all these people who are never moving, even to the point where people like Gargano and Ciampa came out like audibly on camera, on WWE television, in the ring, and Ciampa in the documentary and said, "I will never leave NXT, so much so that I'll retire."
I want to pick up on that. I want to pick up on that because I think that is getting at the real heart of the problem, but I don't think it's necessarily for the reason you said. I don't think that Triple H intentionally just started signing people to just be NXT guys forever.
Okay.
I don't think when he brought in the Undisputed Era, I don't think when he first brought in Gargano and Ciampa, I don't think the plan was keep them in NXT forever and ever and ever and ever. I think especially in the case of Gargano and Ciampa, it happened that like they were brought in during the height of the golden era, like the height of the golden era of NXT.
Yeah.
Were the classic example of started from the bottom of the card, worked their way up to these like beloved star status, had their big classic series of matches, and then they were the first set that were really just like, oh, these are real little guys. And Vince is trying to start this cruiserweight division on the main roster and fucking it up real bad.
Well, they were in the Cruiserweight Classic. They
were. And I'm thinking, so like, I think what ended up happening is, in the case of Gargano and Ciampa explicitly, I think what ended up happening is it's like, okay, so I can either get called up to this main roster where I will probably end up in this cruiserweight division that's going nowhere, or I can use the pull I've got with Uncle Paul to stay here in NXT where he'll keep me on the top of the card forever. I think the performers had more input into that, and I think that's still a problem. I'm not saying that doesn't make it a problem, and I'm not saying that it didn't inevitably lead to issues for NXT, because it did, because we have talked for months now in the cases of Gargano, Ciampa, and the Undisputed Era people, where it's just like, okay, why are they still here? You know, when we talked about Adam Cole and him re-signing with the company and whether or not he was going to do it, our exact words were, if I'm Adam Cole, I re-sign as long as I leave NXT. If they want me to stay in NXT, I can make that kind of money and go somewhere else.
100%. You're right. Your point is right. I think Gargano and Ciampa specifically may be bad examples of the point you're making, for the only reason that, one, Gargano and Ciampa, as we seem to have forgotten, were called up until Ciampa messed his neck up, and then they went back because they had nothing for them separately. It was a tag team thing. And when the whole NXT invaded Survivor Series thing happened because of the Saudi situation, you remember the person who was propped up as the leader of NXT was Tommy Champion. Yeah. So there was Goldie. With Goldie. No, he wasn't the champ. Adam Cole was the champ. Ciampa was this was after Goldie. This was face Ciampa after he came back from the neck injury. They had him standing side by side and like with Roman and Seth Rollins. So, but yes, I think there was a legit concern, especially when Ciampa and Gargano were signed, because remember, they weren't signed like the Undisputed Era were, or like the Fearsome Five of Neville, Owens, Kenta, Pac. I said Neville. Sammy and Finn. They weren't touted. They were given dates and worked their way up to getting a contract, and then got put in the Cruiserweight Classic, and then becoming a tag team and work. DIY is real. They worked their way from the bottom. But there's a lot of other people, which leads to kind of an amalgamation of both of our points. Amalgamation. What's up,
Yeah.
boy?
Yeah.
Is that NXT became essentially the indie hub, and 90% of those people that Hunter was signing, he knew weren't gonna make it on the main roster or weren't gonna work on the main roster. And I'll give you a perfect example of that, even though I'm going before the indie hiring spree. But I think Bayley is the perfect example of why NXT didn't work on the main roster, because Bayley spent 2 years having one of the best character arcs in the history of professional wrestling. From being a nobody to being almost, not dare I say, Eugene-esque, to, getting bullied and beat up and turned on by everybody, to finding her inner strength, to becoming her own person, to Brooklyn. That was a fantastically beautiful 2-year span. Literally almost 2 years. And then all of that, the people loved her. She became the female John Cena. She sold that much merch from NXT. And she gets called up. And she's expected to be all of that upon call up. The main crowd don't know that story. So they don't have the same affection for her that people who watch NXT do.
They never went out of their way to tell you the stories.
Well, that's facts. Yes.
And that is something, because I think that there could have been a happy middle ground there, where it's like, instead of giving me the vignettes of so-and-so is coming, or even if you give me those so-and-so is coming vignettes, in that first handful of weeks when you're giving them the squash matches and you're establishing who they are and blah, 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 show me that story. Show me in the first vignette, like, Fangirl Bayley arrives in NXT and she's kind of a fish out of water and we're not sure what she's going to become. And in part 2, show me her figuring it out and she's getting really close, but she can't quite get there. And then in part 3, you show me her and Sasha shock the world in Brooklyn and she's a badass.
That's good stuff, because my initial reaction was the Bayley story. Bayley's character in that story wasn't something I think you could just kind of condense and be like, hey, let me explain this to you in a matter of vignettes and weeks. Whereas Sasha's simple. That's a simple character to explain to people. Charlotte is a simple character to explain to people. Like, Kevin Owens is a simple character to explain to people. Bayley was so nuanced, right? The second thing is, and this goes back to when I texted you that day, Vince is like, if she's this big a deal, and you're making her this big a deal, you have the very first, and with respect to TNA, the first North American main evented show by women was Bayley and Sasha at TakeOver Respect. Mm-hmm. So Vince, I'm sure Vince is hearing all this stuff about Sasha and Bayley, and that's why him and Stephanie pulled Sasha, Becky, and Charlotte, because they needed to revamp the women's division. They revamped the women's division, bring back the women's title. The one left over is Bayley, who only got bigger after they left. I'm sure Vince is thinking, I should have to do shit. If she's this big, she should walk in day one and be known. And unfortunately, she wasn't. And to Vince's credit, for all the people say Vince hates NXT, he's done that numerous times. Kevin Owens walked in first day, John Cena. Finn Balor walked in first day, Roman Reigns. Sami Zayn walked in first day, John Cena. These people are walking in, getting major stories. It's just the cream rose, and the ones that wasn't the cream didn't really work.
I mean, I guess that's fair.
I know the wasn't the cream is a bit harsh. I don't mean that they couldn't work, but everything that worked on the indies and NXT don't work in Raw and SmackDown.
You're right. But I think where I think where the difference ultimately became, and some of that is because NXT was developmental, and so that this was the point of it. But like the difference was NXT had patience and gave you the time to figure it out and iron out the kinks and like become the character. Bayley didn't step foot into NXT as Hugger Bayley. She had to figure that shit out.
Great point. Yes,
whereas main roster WWE, my example for this is going to be Tyler Breeze before Breezango.
Gotcha.
They brought Breeze in, and they did keep pretty much the same gimmick because Prince Pretty is an easy gimmick. It's an easy gimmick. Translates just fine. But when the very first storyline didn't hit the exact way that they wanted it to, he was instantly put into a comedy angle with R-Truth and Fandango and
Dolph
Ziggler. Like, instantly put into a comedy angle that nobody took seriously. And then they flopped the teams to make Breezango a thing. And even at that point, it was still put on as this, like, bullshit that nobody cared about and nobody believed in. It wasn't until they did the brand split and started doing the Fashion Files and were given time.
Great point.
To start, they start with what the first Fashion Files was maybe a 30-second vignette, and they just progressively allowed it to build from there, and it became this like weird Twin Peaks thing that was just really fun and unique and made you care about them.
It became big when WWE started to want to become a part of it. When the creative wanted to start writing
they started putting it on the website because this was early enough that they didn't put everything immediately on YouTube. They were putting it on the website.
Yep. So then let me flip it this way because I have this question for you, and I know what your answer is going to be, but you may surprise me. But I think it's a fair discussion to have. Not saying I lean either way or the other, but Tyler Breeze is a perfect example of what you tried to express. But everybody I've mentioned, and I'm not male-wise, everybody I've mentioned in this entire conversation, unfortunately, has been 6 foot or smaller. The only one that's a heavyweight, unfortunately, is Kevin Owens, which is why he's been the most successful of the people we've named, with the exception of Finn. Finn has probably been the most successful, but we know he's had some ups and downs. But from a guy like Breeze, specifically, with the perfect gimmick, who played it perfectly, exuded the Zoolander-esque Blue Steel model. If he was 6'3", don't you think that shit would have worked? Which may fall into Vince's point. I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
So my answer would be, and you probably did predict that this would be my answer. I don't know if it necessarily would have worked, but I bet you if he was 6'3", it would have been given more than one storyline to work.
That's for damn sure.
And that's where like my point really comes in. That's what my ultimate thing was, is because you're right. I don't dispute what you said. You're right. But my argument would be, even if it didn't work when he was 6'3", if that first storyline went the exact same way that it did, if he were 6'3", I bet you if he were that 6'3", Vince would be like, let's give him another one. Let's figure this out. Let's give him another one. Let's see it. Was it him? Is it the gimmick? Or is it just, for whatever reason, him and Dolph didn't have chemistry? As opposed to, because he's not taller, it was just, this didn't work, so, like, whatever. He's, like, a cruiserweight. Figure something out for him to do.
That's a great point. And I also want to add a point that I don't think many people listening really... You know me, I'm a big details guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think context matters in every situation, but especially in wrestling situations, because only one person picks and chooses who wins. So it's the other reasons that make the story, right?
Right.
Everything we've talked about Breeze, I think, is factual, and if he would have been 6'3", he'd have got more chances. But I think we forget that Tyler Breeze wasn't called up because Vince wanted him. Tyler Breeze was called up as one of the guys Triple H promotes because they've been there too long. We forget Tyler Breeze, a.k.a. Mike Dalton, that's not his real name, that's his original wrestling name, is an FCW guy. Tyler Breeze was Roman Reigns' tag team partner in FCW. Tyler Breeze was in FCW that long. So it was literally a shit or get off the pot moment, and Hunter called him up as a kind of a thank you for doing this so long. We need to put you on the main roster. Not too dissimilar from Xavier Woods' original call up when he basically stole Brodus Clay's gimmick in music. I'll give you the best example of the bunch. Directly after WrestleMania, I can't remember which one it was. The Vaudevillains got called up.
Oh,
Ain't
the
a person
Vaudevillains.
in the world thought that Aiden and Simon Gotch deserved to be on the main roster, but because they had been there so long, Triple H gave them the call up. And you saw what happened. Simon Gotch almost killed Enzo, and they got broken up within 4 months of them being on the main roster.
So I would counter, the only counter I would have, because everything you just said was factual, the only counter I would have to it would be, I don't think it's necessarily that we didn't think they deserved to be called up so much as we knew this team ain't ready. Simon Gotch is green as fuck. Aiden English is bland. This team is not going to work. As it turned out,
considering the other tag teams that were possibly that could possibly have been called up,
as it turned out, Aiden English found his actual calling as Rusev's hype man, and it was the greatest thing ever. To the point that even now that he's getting back into the industry, he's just like, I'm not really gonna like wrestle full time anymore. I'm gonna do commentary. I'm gonna manage. I'm gonna announce. Like, I'm gonna use this beautiful voice that I have.
He always knew where his bread was buttered. He always did. And the Vaudevillains actually worked as a tag team in NXT, but they worked because they were counterculture. You put them on the main roster is not going to get the gimmick.
They also worked because, and this was another problem that NXT had more before, and I'm hoping that they'll have it less if they ever are actually touring as a televised brand. In the age of Full Sail, literally everything that went to Full Sail was over. It was either over like Rover, or if it wasn't over, they shat on it so hardcore that it got the right amount of heel heat.
Well, Dallas.
And the acoustics of the arena were such that, like, it always sounded hype as fuck. And so, like, what you ended up with was a situation where we were never certain. We always thought we knew, because it's like, oh yeah, this act is probably for real over. This will be, and once they started doing takeovers in the bigger stadiums, and you heard who was getting actual pops, it's just like, oh yeah, people really did like, they're gone now, but people really did at the time like Enzo and Cass. They were over.
Yes, no question. They were over on the main roster from day one. They debuted and the crowd did their entire thing. Like,
not to mention to this day, like, I mean, I think she would have eventually probably figured it out regardless, but like Carmella owes her start to that.
Oh, 100. By the way,
Carmella became someone we cared about because, and this right here, this is Carmella, and she's hot as hell, and you can't teach that.
By the way, if we're gonna give Triple H credit for one thing, is it that he saw the writing on the wall and knew early enough to get Alexa and Carmella away from those two teams?
Mm-hmm. He was
because
just like,
he saw that they
I
were
got
superstars.
elements here. I got characters here.
Yeah, but no, keep going because you cook with grease. Good stuff.
Well, no, so like I think that became part of the inherent problem of NXT, and it's part of why, ultimately maybe it didn't work out. If you want to make that argument, I mean, you can definitely make it, is because you never knew for sure who was over because everybody was over. And so then they get to the main roster and you have one of three things happens. Either, and this one was really common, creative didn't know what the fuck to do with these characters because there was no communication seemingly between NXT creative and main roster creative. And there should have been. It should have been no different than if we're using a regular sports analogy, getting called up from single A to double A, double A to triple A, triple A to the majors. The coaching staff is going to call you up and say, yo, so I know you're calling up my boy Rance. Let me tell you, he's got a really strong arm. He's got quick feet. But sometimes his reactions aren't very good. He's got to work on that so that they know coming in, all right, man, so I've heard you struggle with reaction times. These are the drills we're going to have you focusing on.
Yep. No synergy whatsoever.
No synergy. There was never somebody sending bullet points to say, hey, so this is American Alpha. This is what they are. This is how they work. The whole point was this is an odd couple pairing. Jason's real serious, but Chad's really silly. But it works because they're so technically sound together. Hey, this is Carmella. This is what she has become. Here's how you use that. Like, there was no synergy. And so sometimes it worked. Sometimes you had someone like Alexa who was able to just figure it out as she went along in this new adventure. True. And they were smart enough, because this was that original SmackDown creative team that was smart enough to go with the crowd reaction and go with the momentum. They were like, oh shit, this girl's got momentum. Let's just give her the title and we'll figure it out from there. And that became, oh yeah, I'm the goddess. I'm hot shit.
Well, also it helped that Alexa could talk. It's always easier when you can do some of the work yourself. Because I mean, no disrespect by this, but so many of these guys can't do the work single-handedly by themselves. Full Sail, you said it perfectly, masks so many deficiencies. Full Sail at NXT, it's funny because NXT was, before AEW, was kind of considered the kind of spirited successor of ECW.
Well, you know why that's also funny? For as much heat as there is between Stephanie and Paul E. Dangerously, Uncle Paul and Paul E. have a lot in common when it comes to, this is my wrestler, here are all of his strengths. I'm going to do everything that highlights these strengths and those 4 things he can't do. We're never going to put him near it. We're just never going to put him near it.
But remember where both men came up at. They both came up under Bill Watts in WCW. Remember that.
Oh yeah.
They both cut their teeth around the same place. So that's an ideology both of them agree with. You're right. Accentuate the positives and hide the negatives for a lot of the people.
And where that became a problem was because there's no synergy between NXT and main roster. When they got to the main roster, they don't know the negatives. And even if they did know the negatives, they're main roster. So they're just going to do, look, Vince wants you to do this. So here you go. And,
so true.
And in a lot of the cases, it's just like, well, this is why we had Gold in NXT and we have Copper on the main roster.
But at what point is that on NXT and on Triple H? Because I know everything ultimately falls on Vince.
No, I think it partly is. Yeah. I think it's one of those 60-40 moves or 50-50 even moves where it's just like at least half of this blame falls on the developmental system, because if you're the developmental system, you're supposed to develop them into what I want them to be.
Yeah.
So like half of the blame falls on that. But the other half of the blame falls on, to continue with the sports analogy, it falls on the big league club, because if I drafted you as a pitcher and I'm trying to put you on the major league roster as a second baseman, when you've been developed as a pitcher this entire time, and that's always been your skill set, and that's all you've known, and we've never asked you to field, we've never asked you to bat, we've never asked you to do these things. So maybe you haven't done them since you were in school or you were in Little League and first learning how to do it. And it's just like, half of that falls on the developmental for not keeping your skills sharp. But the other half of that falls on the main coaching staff for not recognizing this is what I have. And I'm not using it the way that I should.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hey folks, PC Tony here. Thanks to our new partnership with Angry Lemonade, you can save 10% on physical products and digital commissions using the promo code ChairShot. Head to angrylemonade.net to check out their amazing catalog of products and services. Use the promo code ChairShot to save 10%. That's angrylemonade.net.
Are you looking for the newest and hottest in the world of pro wrestling? Then check out the amazing action on Powerslam.tv, the biggest indie pro wrestling channel in the world. Get over 6,000 hours of the best events from over 150 of your favorite promotions from 20 different countries around the globe. Brands like Progress Wrestling, Evolve Wrestling, Combat Zone, Defy, PCW Ultra, PWX, Over the Top, Shine, and hundreds of others with fresh content added every day for only $5.99 per month. Get your free trial today at powerslam.tv.
Go to powerslam.tv, promo code ChairShot, get your free month. Again, that's powerslam.tv, promo code ChairShot.
TheChairShot.com. Always use your head.
So thanks for helping us pay those bills, y'all. Sorry about some of the random jump cuts. We are, a live production, and sometimes we get pulled away from the recording. Anyway, so NXT is inevitably apparently going to be restructured. And the real confusion and concern now, with all of these cuts and these rumors of like the changes, the thought is, okay, so with the people that are already there, who stays and who goes? That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, once they've done that and they've, kind of equaled out that transitionary phase, what does this new NXT look like? Is it something that's going to be good enough to stay on USA?
So I'm not concerned about that, only because, Vince McMahon and Dick Ebersol are best friends.
Facts,
So-
and USA ain't got shit for programming.
I'm saying Suits is gone. So what else they got on the TV, on the channel, right? It's nothing else. It's Todd Chrisley and WWE. That's about all they got. So I'm not concerned so much about that. They'll find something to do, more content, bing bang boom. I am worried about the quality of the content, even though these guys can wrestle, but how will it be framed? But to that concern, the rumors say that they want to make it a bigger budget, more like the main roster-esque from a look standpoint, new lighting, new logo, new music, which could help the presentation. So even though I think the presentation is dope,
I think what that might help. One thing that might help is that might help with some of the consistency between the two products. Like I'm hoping that maybe
it looks so different.
Maybe if they make them the same, even though it will be to NXT's detriment, because if we're talking consistent quality, NXT consistently has put out a higher quality product.
Facts.
Than the main roster.
No,
So
this
from, like,
AW, I still will go on my shield saying NXT has been the best, most consistent quality television years running.
Yeah, so from a quality standpoint, it might result in a lesser quality NXT, but just from a continuity standpoint, maybe if they're being produced in a similar way, we won't have as many situations like Doudrop, Piper Niven Doudrop, like where you decide to bring them up and then you just not only completely repackage them, but you act like you ain't ever seen them before. And in certain cases, it's kind of insulting because it's just like, wait a minute, this person had like multiple title matches at several takeovers on appeared in many specials.
You know what's so sad about Doudrop? If they only didn't act like they didn't know who she was, it'd be perfect.
Yeah, everybody would have been
That's the
fine
only
with
problem.
everybody would have
That's the
been
only
fine
problem.
with the name change because of the way that they explained the name change. If you'd have just said the former Piper Niven and
You don't
showed
even have to
clips
say her name.
of-
What is she doing here?
Yeah,
Just act like you had seen her before.
show clips. Say, oh, this woman has dominated NXT UK.
Yeah,
Just acknowledge that you know who they are. So maybe this might help in that standpoint. But let's get into this roster in terms of the people that remain. Who's still in NXT, and then who do they ultimately, if this is the direction they're going in, say, kick rocks, big dog?
as we talk about this, for those of you listening, understand we are building to, in a couple of weeks, TakeOver 36. So this is all pre-TakeOver 36 because the writing on the wall feels like there's going to be massive changes.
And the only guarantee
after TakeOver.
And the only guarantee I think right now for TakeOver 36, and I mean, some people say, oh, is it a guarantee? Is it a guarantee? Karrion Kross is losing the NXT title at NXT TakeOver 36.
I'm pretty sure. I would agree with that.
He has been on Raw for 3 or 4 weeks now?
This was his fourth week because Jeff Hardy, he
and
lost
2.
to Jeff Hardy, he beat Keith Lee, he lost to Keith Lee, and then he beat Jeff Hardy. Yeah. So 4 times.
Yeah, so 4 weeks in a row, that's not just being used for the sake of being used.
Oh, no, he's called up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're actively back on the road, touring. He has been called up. TakeOver gonna be the swan song.
To your credit, I think that, but if I'm not mistaken, Kevin Owens had a defense that he defended and was still Sasha Banks. They will call him a champion and let them be champion for another cycle. So anything could happen. I will say this: it is a very NXT like swerve for us to all be like Samoa Joe. Boom, he's winning, he's coming back first thing, and then Karrion Kross choke his ass out. That's quite NXT-esque swerve. I'm just saying. I don't think it's gonna happen though.
Speaking of swerve, Hit Row.
Yes.
Hit Row. Does Hit Row stay in NXT or
they ain't going nowhere?
Or are we gonna find out somewhere else?
They ain't going nowhere. I can tell you they ain't going nowhere, because if they go somewhere, then they got to fight on their hand. If they fire AJ Francis, aka Top Dollar,
I'm not talking about fired.
Show.
No, I'm not talking about fired. I'm saying in new NXT, like in the new NXT, are these people who are kept in NXT, or are these people that they're like, oh no, we're gonna have to send you to the main roster because you don't fit what we are anymore?
Let me tell you why they stay in NXT. And
right.
this is going to hurt to say. It's gonna hurt to say.
Go ahead.
But so much of the main roster is built on personality and built on instant, oh my godness, right? Even if you don't have to be 6'7" for you to see someone and be like, oh damn. You don't have to be super big. It's just a magnanimous personality. Isaiah Swerve Scott is one of the best people on that roster, from a person-wise to a wrestler-wise to personality-wise. But he's so chill. I don't think he'll get the reaction that people will want on the main roster. And with him being the head of that stable, I don't think it would work, because they're only as good as the head.
Counter. I think I would agree with you if they were to come to the main roster in the same way that like a Karrion Kross did, where like they just show the fuck up one day.
I'm just saying, that's normal the way.
However, there's a way to make it work, because you're right, he is really chill, but do you know what Hit Row has, and the reason why they run shit in NXT? Like,
chemistry.
They ooze, not just chemistry, they ooze swagger.
Yes.
They have like a swag and a presence about them. If you allow them a couple of weeks to do some raps, allow them a couple of weeks to establish that concept of Hit Row Records. If you didn't know, now you know. Let them get a couple of weeks of that. That can establish just that in and of itself, and definitely allow them to continue to rap their way to the ring. That in and of itself will establish a level of swag for them that I think will transcend into the main roster, even with the white audience, because if there's one thing we know about a white audience, they love dick riding cool black shit.
Well, that we have 200 years of that.
Yeah, we have centuries of data.
So I think we're saying the same things, just in different ways. This is what I mean. Yes, I'm talking specifically about just dropping them, but I also think what I mean is that we, much like Bayley, we've seen Swerve go through so many different character changes to the point where he is now, right? Swerve City podcast is on the damn network, or Peacock, or whatever the fuck it's called.
Yeah.
But my fear is that Top Dollar and his rhymes are more vicious than Swerve's, because he's so loud and abrasive. He's going to overshadow Swerve. Ashanti the Adonis is the most swaggiest human being I've ever seen in the way he walks and dresses.
And
he's going to overshadow Swerve.
And B-Fab is fine as fuck.
And she got this kind of "you can't touch me and I'm better than you" esque-ness.
She's a female MC. Like, there's something about there's something that it takes to be a female MC that like requires you to carry yourself in such a way where it's just like, oh, this is a boss bitch.
She almost plays Sasha better than Sasha.
Like, oh, this is a boss bitch. Okay.
She's going to overshadow Swerve. And that's not because Swerve isn't better than them. Swerve is the best rapper of the group. Swerve is the best wrestler of the group. Swerve is the best talker of the group. But because he's so such a low-key person and likes to let everybody else work, get their love, that I'm afraid that they're going to split him up like that, because, oh, Top Dollar's a superstar. Put him in singles guy. Oh, Ashanti the Adonis, he's small, but he's cool. We'll put him back in the cruiserweight division. Instead of leaving them the way they gathered the dynamic.
What cruiserweight division?
Well, I mean, there's still 205 Live show. Shout out to Ikemen Jiro. He's the only one that's still on the roster. Him and Brian Kendrick, the producer. So that's what I mean. I don't want the group to be fundamentally changed, to be split up, or anything. And I feel like if Swerve was more of a loud, abrasive, go-getter type guy, then I feel like Vince would feel more beholden to say, "Oh well, pal, we're gonna keep the group around you because I see money in you." And I don't think Vince will see money in Swerve, not as a leading man.
I mean, I don't necessarily think that I disagree. I just, hope. I could definitely, well, yes, hope, but I mean, I also could just definitely see them be moved out of NXT if they decided that doesn't fit with whatever the new thing is.
I agree with you too, but I also would say to the counter, somebody got to stay to lead the group. Somebody has to stay to be the top guys to help establish whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah, because
the best way to establish a show is a stable. That's always the best way to establish.
Well, you're right, and you're doubly right, because if we really look at the rest of like the upper echelon of both the men's and women's divisions of NXT, they all got to go up. They all got to go up. The upper
been there. You had two. You graduated twice since they've been there.
Yeah, the upper ends of the men's division are Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Roddy Strong, fucking Cross we've already discussed. Finn Balor already got called up. Pete Dunne, been there forever. Johnny Gargano, Tommy Ciampa.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Then if you go to the women's division, Io, Dakota, like somebody.
Right, Raquel may have just been on TV for a little bit, but she's been there since FCW.
Index,
she's been there forever.
Index, both of them as a unit. Like all of that, all of those guys have been there forever. They've done everything there is to do. From an age standpoint, they're definitely not developmental stars anymore. And if you're talking about you need stars and bodies, shit, that's an entire fucking mid card and like badass women's division right there. Just right the fuck there.
I think so. If I may switch to another person who I think is perfect for the rebuild, and it's funny because the dude signed almost to be back in the big time because he was the king of the smaller companies, and now he's gonna have to do it again. It's LA Knight. I think he is also a perfect. He's a perfect top level. And by the way, I love that Britt Baker stole this thing and nobody gives a fuck.
No, it's funny. It's funny you bring that up. You're right that nobody gives a fuck, but it's funny you bring that up. When I was at Dynamite, there were people in the crowd behind me who knew Eli Drake, and people brought it up. We were just like, oh yeah, she totally stole that shit from Eli Drake, the namer of dummies. Dummy, yeah. But like, you're absolutely right. Nobody gives a shit. But part of the reason that nobody gives a shit is because when he re-signed with NXT, he agreed to change his name.
He still does it though. LA Knight. He still does it.
He does still do it,
but
it's
I'm
not
saying
the same. It would have been less obvious, or it would have been more obvious of the like where she got it if it's like, oh yeah, Eli Drake been doing this shit for a decade.
This is true, and I also appreciate the fact how even though he still talks the same, he still uses the same catchphrases, still uses the same cadence, he's changed his character a bit.
He's more the WWE's version of elite, uppity, upper class type. Because Impact at the end of the day is still indie wrestling.
Yes.
And so like indie wrestling has a very specific like image in mind when they think of a star. WWE is a $1 billion multi-traded company that has produced actual A-list movie stars.
Great point.
So like when they're trying to establish someone as like a legit A-lister type, they have a totally different aesthetic.
Great. The number 1 and number 2 movies in the world right now are fronted and starred in by WWE brand superstars. So I mean, that's think about it. Suicide Squad and John Cena, Jungle Cruise and Mr. Dwayne The Rock Johnson. That's crazy.
So you've got that, and then also just like the fact that that company is owned by billionaires. It's kind of like one of the things, AEW gets rich characters right, because when you're a company run by rich people people know what rich people look like.
Oh, by the way, to add further to it, Dune is coming out in a couple of weeks. Who stars in that movie? Dave Bautista. So, I mean, it's like the writing's on the wall. But I think LA Knight, so whenever you started, I'm imagining, I'm looking at this probably in the wrong way, but I'm thinking of it if you're basically starting a new company or a new brand or a new anything. You always, it's good to have a stable, preferably heel. It's good to have a strong heel champion. And then it's good to have a baby who can do anything. And so you got two of those in MSK and Cameron Grimes.
So I think the difference I would say between an LA Knight and a Cameron Grimes is I think that eventually a Cameron Grimes still goes on to a Raw or SmackDown, if for no other reason than Cameron Grimes is only 29.
You're right, but it's not because of an age. It's because you think Vince will use him.
Yes, for one reason and one reason only. He can do everything. And Vince always has use for a utility guy that don't get hurt a lot. A small utility guy that can do any gimmick, that can cut a halfway decent promo, and that doesn't get hurt a lot, who can bump like crazy and make his opponent look like $1 million. Vince will find time for that.
You're right. I mean, look, you're right.
Here's the difference. I'm gonna be you for a second.
Okay.
You're worried about it because in NXT, Cameron Grimes is what Cameron Grimes should be: a main attraction, a top guy, a big deal.
Yep.
If he goes to the main roster, he might just be a utility player. He's a guy that can do everything.
Yeah.
That when I have a need for him, I've got a shot to utilize him. But his ceiling is probably mid-card. And I think that in a case like his, some of your trepidation is the inherent fan in you who's worried, like, fuck, no, like, don't send him up there because they're not going to do it right. And you're right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of it. So then, if we're not going to peg him as kind of our top-level baby,
I think he could be your top-level baby in a short-term sense. I just mean that if NXT is going back to being developmental, then the goal should be with our top-level baby and some of those things. You're a top-level baby for, 6 months to a year, and then we're going to ship you on out. We're going to bring in the next top-level baby that we're building up. My difference with him and LA Knight is LA Knight is like 37, 38. He lives in Florida. He's a veteran of the industry and the type of person that you could use in more of a training capacity anyway.
Sure.
And my thought is like, he's the kind of person that I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to probably keep you in NXT because I can use you in NXT for the duration.
So, if we're moving past Cameron thinking he's going to be moved in a minute, what do you think about the two guys, the three baby faces in the breakout tournament? The big man Odyssey Jones, Carmelo Hayes, aka Christian Casanova, and Trey Baxter, the high flyer. What do you think about those guys?
So I think the high flyer will get over the most with the crowd. I think Vince will be all about, let's push this big guy. Let's see what he's got. Let's develop this.
But the guy who's been over the most so far is my boy Carmelo Hayes. Like, the crowds love that guy. And he has, by far, one of the best looks you'll see in the whole thing.
And so if Hunter and Sean still have any kind of pull in NXT, I know that's a big if. That's what I'm saying. If they still have any kind of pull in NXT, then a guy like that will continue to get time and opportunities. If not, then it's going to depend on who's put in charge, because a lot of that also depends on, who's in control of NXT now.
Well, that's a good question. And, a better question is who's in control of NXT. I guess for this conversation, who will be in control of booking whatever territory ends up being? Because I don't think Vince will change Triple H from being in charge of NXT developmental, because he's put too much into that.
I don't disagree.
And his actual title, unless they change his title, is he's over talent relations.
So I don't disagree necessarily with that. Maybe a better way to phrase it is how much more involved are other members of the office staff going to be?
Oh, yeah, right. I don't know if Triple H is going to be the guy who books the show. They might all three create. Bruce might be over like he's over on SmackDown. He might be NXT
and in a case, and the reason that matters.
Well,
the reason that matters to our whole debate is because, like, if Paul doesn't have autonomy over the booking anymore, it's harder to predict how things are going to shake out. But I think one thing that we do agree, I think one thing we do both agree on, though, is it feels like this is somehow going to end, maybe not all at once, but over the next, couple of months, it feels like this is going to end with most of the current upper card of NXT phased into the main roster and NXT being completely revamped.
So I have a list of the roster here currently. I'm gonna run through some names. You tell me up or stay. Okay. And by up, I mean I think realistically within 6 months.
Yeah.
Everybody's not gonna get called up tomorrow. Okay.
Right.
I'm not gonna include people we've already named.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna include this guy right here because I'm going in terms of A to Z. Austin Theory is clearly getting called back up because he's been working the main roster since they started touring again. And
realistically, I don't think that they're gonna do it, but like realistically, the smartest way to call up the rest of them is to bring up the Way, because the Way is money. I don't think they're gonna.
Yeah, but the Way's basically split up after Austin disappeared out of nowhere and they haven't seen him, and then now Indies with Dexter. The Way's seemingly split up. Even though I know it's sad because they were you don't think they're a family. I think they're a family, but okay. Tien Sha, and I'm talking about Xia Li, Big Boa, and
all of that.
Whatever Karen, whatever the lady she plays. I can't remember her name.
I think because they're so new, I'm gonna say stay.
Okay, now Xia has worked main roster. It may
but because the group they
up.
might bring her up, but like because the group is so new, I'm just gonna have to say stay.
Sure. Now again, Boa's been there. Boa was in the first breakout tournament, the very first one with Angel Garza and ACH and all those people. So that goes to show you how long he's been there. Okay. The new Pat McAfee's All Stars. Pete Dunne, Oney Lorcan, Danny Burch, get well soon governor, and Rich Holland. All four go
up? Pete definitely. Danny and
Oney.
Do what?
You talking about Oney or Rich Holland?
Yeah, talking about Danny and Oney will come up together as a tag team.
They've been on the main roster before because of the 205, so that's very easy.
That's what I'm saying. Pete Dunne definitely, and then Danny and Oney will definitely as a tag team.
Rich Holland, what do you think about him? I think he stays.
I was gonna say, isn't he just back off that like major surgery?
Yeah, but he looks great because he wrestled last week. He looks really
good. But like, I think they definitely are gonna like give him at least a year of like conditioning and seasoning and like matches and all that.
I'm not gonna count Indy because again she's been sitting on the main roster.
Index gone.
Dexter's gone. You think?
Oh, I think Index. I think Index is gone, and here's my thing. Hunter found a way to creatively utilize Dexter Lumis, and if Vince looked at that at all, that's the kind of shit Vince loves. Vince loves weird, creepy big dudes that are mediocre in the ring.
You're right.
He loves that shit.
You're right. The American side of Imperium, Fabian Eichner and Marcel Bartel.
They're a tag team, and they're a really good tag team.
I would imagine
they have no characters.
Well, they have characters, but their characters are strictly based upon being Walter's soldiers. So I don't think they get called up only because of the ability to go back and forth between NXT and NXT UK. Because Walter ain't never going to the main roster. The Diamond Mine, Malcolm Hachiman and Roddy Strong.
So here's the thing. I know that they like just got put together on NXT, but like Roddy's like 37. So unless they're gonna keep Roddy in a Bobby Fish, Samoa Joe training role, which they might, I mean, I don't know, but like they fired his wife, and
she probably wanted to go.
I mean, she probably did, but I'm just saying he's 37, 38 years old, and like unless they're about to push him to the title, there's not a whole lot for him to do in NXT. And Malcolm Bivens is the greatest manager ever, so like he can get you over. He get you over. And we are long enough time, Roderick Strong watchers and fans, to know when is Roderick Strong. You're right, but when is Roderick Strong the best? When is Roderick Strong always the best?
When doesn't have a character, it doesn't have to talk.
When he has a strong heel manager.
Gotcha.
Think about when Roderick Strong was the Ring of Honor World Champion.
Talking about Truth.
Yep, he was part of the House of Truth. He had Truth Martini doing all of his promos.
Where is Truth Martini? Where's Truth and where's Prince Nana?
I think Truth is, as far as I know, I think Truth is out of wrestling.
Truth Martini and Prince Nana, and both of them.
I think they
retired. Both of them are the reason we have Malcolm Bivens. It's hilarious, isn't it?
But no, Truth Martini, I think, is the biggest miss in WWE of like not the biggest, but is one of the biggest misses for WWE of the last decade of just how you got somebody who's this good at getting everyone over and you never even gave him a shot.
I'll tell you one who is, but I don't think it's fair to count because unfortunately he left us early. But Sweet and Sour Larry Sweeney would have been perfect for Vince, but unfortunately because what happened.
Yeah.
Man, if Larry Sweeney got in the land of Titantown, oh boy. Okay, back to the conversation at hand. The grizzled young veterans, they gotta go, right? They're one of the best tag teams in the world.
They're established, and the main roster always needs tag teams.
So speaking of tag teams, Santos Escobar and Legado del Fantasma.
Legado better fucking go, and you better push them to the goddamn moon. They won't, but they better.
Did you see Santos steal my boy Grill? He got to go. He got to die.
Santos is that dude. Man.
I'm not even going to ask you about him because he's the Cruiserweight champion, so clearly Kushi's staying.
Which is a shame, but here's the thing, I love Kushida, and I will never speak a negative word about that man.
Agreed. And for his credit, I think, I don't mean any disrespect to who he is, but the perfect spot for him at his age and the situation right now would be to be the ace of the Cruiserweight division and rebuild it, to give it a new luster.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I don't think that's a bad spot. Timothy Thatcher. So he's tagging with Tommaso Ciampa.
He is tagging with Ciampa, and here's the thing, here's the real deal. And so and this will tie into Thatcher. Ciampa's got to get called up. He does. But at this point in his life, in terms of physical health, I think Ciampa got to be a tag team guy. I don't think Ciampa. I don't think that main roster, especially with the travel schedule and all that other shit, I don't think you can have him in the singles division with all those neck troubles and the knee troubles and blah 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 blah. I feel like keeping him and Thatcher in this grizzly badass tag team of unpredictable bald dudes, I think that's got legs.
I agree with everything you said. The only disagreement is, have you watched their tag matches? They are more vicious than his singles matches. So it's this man got Death Wish. Put him in New Japan with Naito and Kota Ibushi. None of them care about their necks at all. None of them do. It's hilarious. I didn't include top stars that I'm pretty sure we're gone, like Kyle O'Reilly. He's either gone or he's gonna be the crown jewel of the company. Something
one or the other.
Let's move to these women a little bit. Let's go to some. We mentioned her, but we didn't. I don't think we actually gave an idea. But Dakota Kai, you think she's gone or you think she stays?
She's going up.
So you don't think she wins the title?
I think she. So I think she's been ready for a long time to go up. I think
Hell yeah.
I think legitimately, I was unsure when they turned her heel, but Dakota Kai is such a good fucking heel.
Well, she's Sami Zayn. She's literally female Sami Zayn in that she was the babyest of the baby faces, but turning heel allowed her to play the role that she. Sami Zayn was as good babyface as you've ever seen in your life. I'm talking all time top 10.
Oh yeah,
Sami Zayn
Sammy is
of
an
all
amazing
time.
babyface, but
But
Sammy
I
was
can't
born.
see him as
He was
anything else.
born to be a conspiracy theorist wearing grandpa glasses.
And you know what's funny? With the exception of Ricky Steamboat, who I never saw play heel, I feel like all true babies are like that. They're better heels because they are great babies.
No, it's not even that. It's not even because they're great babies. It comes down to two things. It's easier to be a heel. Legitimately, it is hard to be a face because you're so restricted, especially in a 2021 environment where, like, who knows what the fuck is going to get you over. Orange Cassidy got over as a mega face by like actively doing nothing and pretending he doesn't give a shit. Darby Allin is over. I hate him, but he's over as a fucking mega face by being a mute. By being a mute who just throws himself off of things.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the things that you used to make you a traditional baby face, things like what Cody does, get you booed out the motherfucking building.
We don't need jingoism in our wrestling, do we?
You're right. I agree with you, but I'm saying part of the reason that so many of the best faces make such amazing heels is because they were able to do something that's hard as fuck, which is get us to like you as a baby face. Now the gloves are off and you can do whatever the fuck you want. Shit. Command the crane.
Ember will probably go back. Frankie got to go.
Oh, she's Frankie Monet? So
she's too big of a personality.
She's got to go. She's got to go. And she's a bigger star than her hubby. But, like, her and John together as a unified act are money, regardless of which one of them is the main star, even if Frankie is still the top act.
Yeah, but I don't think they'll put her together because John's woman on the main roster is The Miz. So,
I mean, you know, maybe Frankie can come between him and The Miz, and we get some good Miz versus Morrison out of that.
I wouldn't be against that, but I don't need to see 3 months of that because I've seen it so much.
Bitch, I don't need to see 3 months of anything. I would really like for WWE to maybe break with the 3-month feud formula. Even if they cut it just to 2 months. Even if they cut it just to 2 months.
Have you met Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard?
I know.
Could I be wearing any more clothes? Shout out to friends.
Doesn't mean I can't hope. Frankie gone.
What do you do about Casey Catanzaro and Caden Carter? Do you keep them in NXT?
I'll tell you what I do about Casey Catanzaro.
Keep your thoughts to yourself, sir.
Send her ass home is what the fuck I do. The other girl I legitimately don't know, so I'm gonna say
that's her tag team partner, the black girl with the fat ass, the blue eyes, and the long.
I'm gonna say keep her in NXT so that I can
know who she is.
No, that's what I'm saying. Get to know her better and, like, you know, have more of an opinion.
Her real name is Lacey Lane, and she was like a point guard for like D1.
I was gonna say I've heard that name before.
Yeah, she was point guard for a D1 team. I'll tell you real quick.
Yeah, I know I've heard that name.
Shaw University.
Okay.
Yeah, but she has good moments, like all of them do. But her and Casey are best friends, so they work well together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think either of them would be good. Casey could be a good underdog babyface, but they work together better as a tag team. EO's gone, we know this. It's hilarious Mandy Rose just got sent back down for all this shit to be happening. Raquel Gonzalez, that is Vince's wet dream. She is Vince's wet dream. She's gone. Do you think any of this will extend across the pond to NXT UK? Mustache Mountain, A-Kid, Noam Dar, Eddie Dennis, Pretty Deadly, Miko Satomura, Kaylee Ray apparently moving to the United States, so I can see that.
So I was gonna my response was gonna be, do they want to move stateside? Because like if they want to move stateside, sure, I could see it happening for some of them. Like maybe not as much. Fuck, who's the other part of Mustache? Seven. Maybe not as much Seven, but like definitely Tyler Bate. If Tyler Bate wants to move stateside, for sure he'll go to the main roster.
As much as Mustache Mountain has been, even more so than Pete Dunne to an extent, the heart and soul of NXT UK, it is just as much as it is for Tommy Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. It's time for them to go.
Listen. As somebody who admires Tyler Bates' package from wherever it may be,
he's talking about UPS people. He's talking about UPS.
I, for one, am for sure here for seeing more of that fine ass on my television.
Man, this is the part of the conversation where I say out loud, if Joe Coffey wasn't such a piece of shit, Gallus would be perfect for the main roster.
Fuck that dude.
Man, they'd be perfect for the main roster. Another guy that may be long to be moved over here because, Walter versus, I'm going to say his name correctly for once, Ilya Dragunov, is going to happen at NXT TakeOver. I think this is where Walter finally loses because Ilya's been built for this. As you saw, I think it is probably where there was almost a murder on TV.
I think it is probably where Walter finally loses, and I know Walter will never go full time to like Raw and SmackDown. You're never going to see him every week, but like it's got to be just a matter of time before Vince offers him one of those like Lesnar. Can you just give me four? Yeah, offers him one of those Lesnar. Can you just like not in terms of money, but just in terms of like, can you give me like 6 dates? I can work just 6 dates. I'll get you in for 2 Raws and a pay-per-view.
So look, first and foremost, this is a stupid question. But legitimately, do you think Vince even know who the fuck Walter is? And I say that because if you remember the Survivor Series match, 2 minutes, Claymore, see ya, go on back to Austria. Do you think he knows who Walter is?
So can I give you my honest answer, bro? Like, honest answer?
That's what we're here for.
I don't think Vince knows who 90% of his roster are anymore.
Like,
legitimately, I think he knows a handful of his, like, top performers in the, like, upper ends of the card. But, like, if we get past the, like, if we get lower than, like, a Matt Riddle on the pecking order, I don't think Vince knows who any of his lower card people are. I don't think Vince knows who any of his NXT people are. I think Vince is at an age where he is so unplugged from it that, like, it's not like it was even maybe 15 years ago where I would say, oh, yeah, I think Vince knows at least 2/3 of his roster. But nah, now I would be surprised if he knows more than a quarter.
So I'm going to disagree with you on that. I think he's more plugged in than he's ever been because it's more on the line right now because there's more money going involved. I do agree he doesn't know NXT or NXT UK because he doesn't need to. He probably knows the top people, like Adam Cole or stuff like that, Gargano and Ciampa. But I think he knows the whole main roster, and I'll tell you why. Look at how many interviews we've seen for people who were the bottom of the bottom, Mike Bennett being one of them, Kurt Hawkins. And they talk all the time about how they would have great conversations with Vince, and Vince knew their stories. So I think he knows. I just don't, again, my theory, which has been forever, is that the people in between Vince and the wrestlers are the worst people in the history of wrestling.
That's their fault.
God off. That is 100% his fault. 100% his fault. But I do think he knows who they are. It's been long standing. Everybody knows that Vince's best friend in the company is R-Truth. We've known this for years. They both Charlie boys.
Like, Vince engenders a type of work environment that does not facilitate strong personnel management.
Do you still think that's Vince that does that, or do you think it's the machine taking over? Because when Vince was the only guy on top, I can agree with that. But there's so many hands. Is it still Vince?
It's still Vince because he created the machine.
Okay.
And he sits at its head.
Okay.
He created this machine. He did the initial public offer, and it has become a giant behemoth conglomerate. But it has always been a giant behemoth conglomerate with one majority shareholder, a giant behemoth conglomerate with one man who has always, no matter what it has been, what venture it has always been repeated, even to this day. Vince McMahon has ultimate veto power over literally everything. Vince McMahon has ultimate decision-making power over literally everything. He could stop a release. He could stop a signing. He could start one at any time. He has ultimate say over everything, which means the machine runs the way that he designed it to run and allows it to do so.
So then a better question is, because you're right, I can't dispute any of that. Do you think he has the power, given that the train's been off the rails for 20 years now? And I don't mean been off the rails in a bad way. I just mean that it's been so long that it's self-sustaining. Do you think he could change it now?
I think he's too insulated and surrounded by sycophants.
Well, I agree with that 100%.
To change it now.
You know how much I hate the middle management of WWE. They're fat. They're god awful.
Like specifically, and I mean this. I'm talking about, years down the road after he has passed, regardless of when that may be. I don't ever wish death on anyone, and I'm not going to start now. Sure. But I'm talking about in that future after Vince has passed, the best thing that Hunter and Stephanie, who I'm just assuming will be the ones to inherit the company, the best thing that they could do, in my opinion, is on the very first day, fire Kevin Dunn. If not fire, completely restructure people like Pritchard and those other big agents at the top, because they are a huge part of the problem.
Kevin Dunn is a piece of shit, but he is, quite frankly and very literally, the best ever at his job. There has never been someone better at that job.
So I'm not going to say you're wrong, because within his field, wrestling specifically, there has never been someone as good at video production as him. But here's the thing. Until somebody gets rid of his ass, when somebody gonna have an opportunity to take that spot?
Look, from our perspective, I'm with you. But from a billion dollar company perspective, with running off the $1 billion payroll that they have to run off of, or whatever the case is, why even take that chance when we got the best now?
So because here's the difference, and this is why I'm talking about a hypothetical future after Vince is gone.
Well, you take the chance then, yeah.
You take the chance then, because the other thing we know about Kevin Dunn is that he frequently has ideas that are the polar opposite of Hunter and Stephanie. And so if you're Hunter and Stephanie and you are inheriting the company and you're trying to, fully make it your own, then it's like, hey, yeah, you were my dad's yes man for a long time, and you had his ear, and you were the person that he went to, and blah, blah, blah. And that's all done.
So you don't think it could be a Vince Russo situation in that he's perfectly used if he's filtered? Because the reason Vince Russo worked when he worked was because he was filtered by people. He didn't have autonomy.
I think Kevin Dunn is a type of toxic that I can find someone else that can do this job.
Okay, I mean, I hope it's out there, but AEW and WCW showed it ain't there.
No. You're misunderstanding me. I'm not saying they're going to find somebody who's exactly as good. I'm not going to say they're going to find somebody who's the replacement, because at that point, it's kind of like replacing a franchise player. You don't instantly replace a franchise player with somebody who's on day one ready to be the new number one franchise guy. But eventually the franchise player gets old and they've got to retire and the team has to move on and you got to draft somebody else. And it's like, listen, you've got the qualifications. We're going to give you all of the support. We're going to give you all the tools that you need. And you got to show me that this is your job.
I love your analogy, but can I give you a different one?
Sure.
The analogy I'm looking at it as is imagine if you are a t-shirt company and you've bought your fabric from this one company, and it's made you the best company in the world from a financial standpoint, and eventually you change your fabric because you needed to change for whatever reason, and the fabric is different, and people can notice the fabric is different. From a business standpoint, you can even look at it you can even use a food analogy. I buy my meat from this company, and we've always done it with this company, but you know what? We need to change from this company, go to this company, and people can tell the difference. Domino's, right? Do you still think it would be, and I'm with you from a personal standpoint, and I think from a growth standpoint, sometimes you just need a different perspective. But I just don't think companies at that level are willing to do that because they're so willing to cling on to what the
Microsoft changed CEOs.
Well, CEO is different than the guy who, quite frankly, shapes the way your product is looked at.
I mean, here's my honest answer. It's not an academic answer at all. It's just my honest answer. You can miss me with all of that. This motherfucker is a detriment to the company, and he's got to go.
I don't disagree. I'm with you. I agree. I can't much of the people that work there.
I can't point any holes.
Corporate employees. I don't disagree.
I can't point any holes in your corporate culture talk, but like what I can say is, number one, miss me with all of that. But number two, here's another reason why I think it's more likely when Hunter and Stephanie take over, especially considering who Hunter and Stephanie are. Part of the reason Kevin Dunn is so toxic is because Kevin Dunn is a misogynist.
Well,
he is so gross and
long proof of that
to women, and I just find it hard to believe that once A, one of the people in charge is a woman, and B, they are the parents of 4 women, that they're gonna keep around this disgustingly toxic misogynist.
And then Hunter, I know people are always gonna hold. I hate when people hold one person's transgressions over their head like they can't change.
And listen. We'll put it out there, and we'll say what it is. Hunter did China wrong.
Yes, and people can hold that over him for the rest of his life.
China wrong. We will not sit here as a podcast and try to say that he didn't, and we're not even going to sit here as a podcast and say that we don't understand why it upsets people the way it does, because it was the tipping point of the downward spiral that ultimately led to China becoming what China becomes.
Yes.
And so if that was your moment where you're just like, nah, fuck this dude, I get it. I get that was your moment where you were just like, nah, fuck this dude. However, I also am willing to allow people to do the work to show me that they're better. I'm not willing to forgive you for nothing, ever. But I will allow you to do the work to show me that you have earned the right to be given a chance.
Thank you for putting that so eloquently. And I also would like to add to that you can't ignore facts. And whether you think it was done with ulterior motive or not, you can't dispute how passionately and dearly Triple H has taken to and try to build and progress women's wrestling in that company.
Yeah.
I don't care if you think he's doing it for the clout. Doesn't matter. He's been doing it and was the only one. And so looking at all that, you have a woman at the top of the company and a guy who believes in women's wrestling as fervently as he does. Yeah, the perception of women in the company are going to drastically change.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing where it's just like, at that point, you look at your corporate culture and you're just like, listen, this is not what we're about anymore. So either happy trails, or from now on, you have one job. Your job is to make the videos. You don't get any input into who's in the video. You don't get any input into the storyline that goes into the video. You don't get any input into who you're putting over in the video. You make the fucking video. I'm going to give you the footage, and you're going to produce it.
I can tell you this. If there comes a day where Kevin Dunn leaves that job, dies on the job, or gets fired from the job, the position of executive vice president, of whatever the fuck his title is called, because it's huge, will be, and I'm not exaggerating with this, one of the most sought after positions in corporate history. And I'm not exaggerating, because that role literally shapes $1 billion industry. You know people gonna want that
Vice
job?
President of fondling Vince McMahon's balls.
Well, I mean, you know, maybe him and Linda wasn't doing it.
I mean,
Somebody
how
had
many
to.
here's my no. My only question is this: how many zeros are in that check? Oh yeah, I got a free hand.
Okay, before we get out here, I got one question for you.
All right.
We've talked a lot about why things are the way they are. We've talked a lot about the perception of the way things have been, what they are, and why they become that. We've talked a lot about the talent and what could happen with the talent. I'm curious to know with you, what do you think happens with the people that ain't there yet? Because the entire purpose of the Performance Center was built because, much like in college football recruiting, you go to the gyms. The gyms are what sways the talent, because you can say, I can see myself going here, doing that. And WWE was sending boys to a warehouse in Tampa and a warehouse in Louisville. The Performance Center was to help get people like Bianca Belair or like Tom Pestock, aka Baron Corbin from the NFL. So now with all this corporate restructuring, with a new developmental system and show possibly in the works, what do you think happens to the new form of recruiting, the Performance Center in general, and where they go from there? Do you think anything changes? Do you think the philosophy changes?
Well, so you know what vibe the Performance Center is giving me in terms of like from what you're talking about, and I'm not trying to make any corporate comparisons, but this is giving me big factory vibes.
Okay.
This is giving me big, and so much like the factory, it's gonna be hit or miss. If your new recruiting structure is to go back to, we have our own school now with our own trainers and our own thing, and we have our own developmental federation that we're going to put you through, and we're going to teach you how to be what we want you to be. Sometimes you're going to churn out the Giant, and you're going to churn out Goldberg, and people are going to say, oh shit, y'all got something here. And then sometimes you're going to churn out some scrubs that we can't even remember the names of.
So, I'm going to run. Go ahead.
All right, just to finish my point, and from a company standpoint, not as much is going to change as people think, because realistically, there will still be two paths to the WWE. There will be the, I want to go the factory route and be a home-trained, homegrown, like corn-fed star of what they want me to be, or I bet your ass if I make a big enough name for myself on the indies that they've heard of me, they will still call and say, hey, so you looking for a job?
Yeah. So I'm going to name, and this is off the top of my head, if I miss somebody, I apologize, but I'm going to name top-level stars that debuted in the WWE from the beginning of 2002 because of the class 2002. John Cena, and the reason I'm naming them, you'll see why. John Cena was trained by UPW, but was only there maybe less than a year, and then got OVW training. So one could say WWE did the majority of his training. Dave Bautista, strictly and solely trained by WWE. Brock Lesnar, strictly and solely trained professional wrestling by the WWE. Randy Orton, strictly and solely trained by the WWE. CM Punk, King of the Indies. Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, King of the Indies. Seth Rollins, King of the Indies.
The Miz,
Ambrose,
trained by the WWE.
I wasn't even thinking about Miz, but that's a good point, because Miz did go to
Miz was an MTV reality TV star. He did do training.
He did train somewhere else, but the majority of his training came from, you're right. So I wasn't even thinking Miz, great point. Dean Ambrose, King of the Indies. Roman Reigns,
John Morrison won Tough Enough.
Sure, but I'm talking top level stars. I wouldn't count John Morrison in this conversation, but he was a Tough Enough guy. Bray Wyatt, trained strictly by the WWE. Charlotte, First ever bump, trained from day one, WWE. Sasha Banks hadn't been training for a full year and a half before she got signed.
You know what I notice as my recurring theme with these people compared to the King of the Indies? The ones that are solely trained by WWE are the same ones who will never leave WWE.
Well, because WWE's invested so much in them, which is why it was so shocking. But the point I'm trying to make is, you can even go further. Becky was trained, had retired, and got retrained by WWE. Like so, and then all the way on to Bianca Belair. So many of the stars of WWE, I'm talking the money-making, marquee level, main event WrestleMania-esque stars. Not like the guys who were on top for a couple months, but I'm talking about the guys they go to. AJ Styles, King of the Indies. These people, right?
Kevin Owens, King of the Indies.
King of the Indies. These people, the majority of these people, were either fully trained by WWE or partially trained by WWE. And I'm not talking I did 6 years by myself and then showed up. I'm talking a year into my training, I got signed by WWE and got trained again. The overwhelming majority are by WWE. So when you say a factory, there's very clearly a formula that's been working. Very clearly. And if we're honest with ourselves, the ones who were the King of the Indies got over in spite of. CM Punk was never meant to be the top star of WWE. That was never Vince's plan. He got over. Daniel Bryan was never meant to be the top star of WWE. That wasn't Vince's plan. But he got over, and Vince, in both situations, acquiesced. So it makes you wonder, you talking about this factory pattern. My analogy for a factory is actually OVW and FCW, what they're going back to. Because then it seems like a factory to me.
No, it really gives me, but see, no, it really gives me more. And I mean, granted, there are obvious reasons for these approaches and blah, blah, blah. And that's a totally different discussion. But it gives more merit to that concept that it's harder in WWE for the indie guys because, like, it feels like in a lot of ways they give more credence to their homegrown people. But that makes sense because they have dumped the resources into them. They have dumped the time into them. They have spent all of this effort into creating what they are, and those people, because they were brought up within their pipeline, know what their expectations are. And I get it from WWE's perspective, but I also then get it why, when you are a King of the Indies type who has paid your own dues, albeit in a different place and done it a different way, why you can often feel like, whoa. Why don't I have these opportunities? Why don't I have these things? And so, like, I can see some of those criticisms as well.
I can too, but then I think of the guy who's acquiesced better than any indie guy maybe ever is Seth Rollins. He has acquiesced completely.
I always forget that he's a King of the Indies. I always forget that he's a King of the Indies.
Ring of Honor champion. Tyler Black was the Ring of Honor champion. He was in the Age of the Fall.
I know, but like, it's hard for me to look at him as Tyler Black. Like, that's just Seth Rollins.
But it goes to show how well he's done in WWE that you forget that. But and just looking at the difference between him and Dean Ambrose, the difference is I think Seth was willing to play the game with the company, and Dean Ambrose wanted to be who I always was. And there's nothing to be said for creative satisfaction and personal fulfillment and happiness. I have no qualms with that. However, at the time, Seth did everything the company wanted him to, which gave him leeway. Dean fought everything the company wanted him to do, which kind of put him number 3, because when the Shield debuted, Dean Ambrose was the top guy.
Yeah, he was the first one to get the singles title.
By the time that he got the solo match with The Undertaker, too. By the time the Shield broke up, he was the 3rd guy. There's a reason for that.
The last thing I want to say, we'll put a bow on this one. Last thing I want to say, and I think I speak for you with this one, to the 13 people who were released from their job, I hope that you find fast employment somewhere else.
Yes.
I look forward to hopefully seeing you wherever that may be.
Yes.
And in some of y'all's cases, you're going to end up in a better position because you're going to be allowed to shine as opposed to having to be in the middle of the card because of bodies.
I completely agree. And I'd also like to say, I really hope that this gives everybody perspective, because there's a lot of lacking of perspective going on in given situation. First and foremost, nobody should ever have to lose their job. And even though this is a occupational hazard, right? We see it all the time in all sports. People get cut all the time. There's cut days, right? That I appreciate that the overwhelming majority of these people have been appreciative of their time and the opportunity, because all you're given is an opportunity when you sign with these companies. And I appreciate that they know now that now is the time for me to go and go work. But I also hope they understand that when you sign a contract with these companies, especially Vince and WWE, understand what the fuck you're getting yourself into. And if that's not for you, then it's not for you. And if you really tried to make it work, wash your hands, you got paid very handsomely, and go and get that check and be better than you ever were.
Well, and especially in the case of, at this point, going to sign for the WWE, because I had brought this up a few months ago, and I still stand by it. It's 2021. The stories have been out there about what kind of working environment that company has created for 40 plus years now.
Yep.
Whether it was Vince injecting performers with steroids and then covering it up, or the negligence behind the Owen Hart situation, or the he who must not be named situation and its tie to performance enhancing drug use that was still going on even after he got caught with the blood money deals. Like, all of that has been out there for years and years and years. And so, like, I'm not mad at you if your lifelong dream is to main event WrestleMania and that's what you want to do. I mean, I hope that that's what you get to do, because I want to see that, because I want to watch that WrestleMania. But also, like, the track record is long enough now that if you sign with that company, you know who they are. You know what they're about, and you know how they run.
And I'm also, if they're the best company for you, or they give you the most money, cool. But understand, and this is the most important thing that I think I'll say all night, and 99% of y'all would disagree with me. I don't give a fuck. Understand that this is not a WWE hazard. Any of these companies will fire your ass, and
AEW's got one coming, y'all. AEW's got one coming. I'm not saying it's tomorrow. I'm not saying it's the next day. But at some point, there ain't no way in hell this company is going to keep 90 plus people on roster and sign new people and never release anybody. There's going to come a time where you're just going to start quietly hearing AEW has released so-and-so. AEW has quietly let such and such's contract expire. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
To quote Kyle's favorite wrestler, everybody pays the toll. TikTok.
I don't know who says that.
Karrion Kross, sir. Karrion Kross. Your NXT champion.
Oh, that guy. I mean, I might not know who says that, but you know who I do know, Rance, just for you? I know Malachi Black.
I love that, but you can still say his old name.
What old name?
I hate you so much.
You're talking about Tommy End? He told you that's not his name anymore.
I don't like you.
Yo, man, tell people where they can find you.
You can find me at Malachi's real name is Alster, a.k.a. Instant Cash.
I don't know who that is.
All right. R-E-Y as in Mysterio, C-A-S-H as in fuck you. And
you can find me on Twitter at Dr. S'mores. You can find the show on Twitter at Outsiders Edge CS. And as always, we are part of the Chairshot we are part of Chairshot Media and the Chairshot Radio Network, where you
always use your head, preferably not with the real chair.
That's at Chairshot Media, y'all. And as always, y'all, remember, we here at the Outsiders Edge are some increasingly less young gentlemen doing everything we can to try to make it out here in this world. And sometimes we're going to do things like fuck up during the outro, because, like, this is low-key the second time we've recorded the show today.
Don't tell nobody that. Insider
tell
secrets.
Everybody think. And other times, we're going to hit you with those real truths, like, cuts suck. We hope these people get jobs. Every company's going to do them.
Yeah.
But no matter what, y'all, we're just out here chasing our dreams, and you have got to respect that. Because if you don't, well, we just don't give a fuck.
You know, can we still say this when Punk actually comes back, since we stole this from Punk?
I mean, yeah.
Well, the answer to that is fuck them.
Fuck 'em. Thanks for listening. We'll catch y'all next time.
Don't fire me, Vince.
Cox can help make your home smarter and your life easier. Now you can use your Contour voice remote to connect to your home life cameras so you can view them right on your TV screen using simple voice commands. That makes it easy to keep tabs on what's happening around your home right from your couch. Need to keep an eye on the kids when they're playing outside? Just say, "Show me my backyard camera" into your Cox voice remote and watch them while you're in the house. And if you're waiting for a delivery and want to make sure it's there on time, no problem. Just say, "Show me driveway camera" to check on it with your Home Life HD cameras on the TV screen while you go about your day. When you live in a home powered by Cox Internet, you can stay connected to what matters and let Cox take care of the rest. To learn more about all the benefits of your connected home, visit cox.com/thisishome today.